This is a Zamcom Radio production. 100.1 FM.
June 16, 1976, Orlando West, Soweto Township, South Africa. A 12-year-old boy is carried through the streets, blood on his chest. His name is Hector Peterson. The photograph of Hector Peterson, taken by Sam Nzima, turned Soweto into a word the world could not ignore. It also turned ordinary school children into symbols of resistance. It would become the image of the Soweto uprising. That morning, 20,000 black school children walked out of class. They weren't skipping school. They were protesting a law that forced them to learn in Afrikaans. By sunset, hundreds lay dead or wounded. This is a story of how a language policy sparked a national revolt. After June 16, 1976, apartheid could not pretend to be stable. Inside the country, resistance moved from negotiation to mass action, from classrooms to townships to the streets. In 1948, the National Party came to power in South Africa and enforced apartheid, legal racial segregation. For black South Africans, education was controlled by the Bantu Education Act of 1953. The goal stated by then Minister Hendrik Verwoerd was to prepare black students for a life of labor, not leadership. Schools were underfunded, classes were overcrowded, teachers were poorly trained. Then, in 1974, the government issued the Afrikaans Medium Decree. It forced all black high schools to teach 50% of subjects in Afrikaans and 50% in English.
Kom nie, dat beteken verstaan. Hy moet nou weer van voor af maat maak.
Afrikaans was the language of the apartheid state, the police, the courts. To students, it symbolized oppression. By early 1976, anger was boiling over in Soweto schools. The Soweto Students' Representative Council, SSRC, formed an action committee to organize a peaceful march. On June 16, students planned to gather at Orlando Stadium and march to Orlando High School. Their slogans were clear: down with Afrikaans, viva Azania, if we must do Afrikaans, Vosta must do Zulu. Many teachers supported the march. The message was discipline and non-violence, but the police were not prepared. The apartheid government had underestimated the students. By 10:30 a.m., thousands had gathered in Orlando West. When the march began, police blocked the route. Students rerouted toward Orlando High School. Police tried to use dogs and tear gas. Students killed 2 dogs and threw stones. Then the shooting started. Sergeant Hayting fired the first fatal shot. 15-year-old Hastings Ndlovu was the first student shot. 12-year-old Hector Peterson was shot moments later.
All of a sudden, they just went out of their cars and came advancing towards us. the first white policeman threw a tear gas. It was the first time we saw a tear gas can. We didn't know even what it was. So when we saw it emitting smoke, we dispersed. And when we came back again. Maybe we thought they would talk to us through a loudspeaker or something like that. All of a sudden, the same policeman who threw the tear gas canister opened fire on the students. I was with Hector Peterson when he was shot. The boy was in that picture where a boy was carrying. He was the first student I saw going down. I saw him being shot on the head and he fell down. I could not believe it. I saw a boy of about 11 going down under police fire. I could not believe it. Apparently, when Hector was shot, the students ran back and I was left with Hector and a girl. I was feeling scared and I wanted to run away too. And this policeman was aiming his gun at Hector again, wanting to finish him off. And this girl stood in front of Hector and told the policeman in Afrikaans that skit for me, shoot for me. And the policeman deviated his aim and shot in the air. And then we took that Hector and gave him to some boys and they took him to the car, which appeared in those pics in the UBJ bulletin.
Chaos erupted. Students responded with fury. Streets were barricaded, cars burned, government buildings and liquor stores were looted and torched. That afternoon, paramilitary riot police arrived with orders: shoot to kill. Law and order should be maintained at any cost. By evening, at least 11 more were dead. The official toll for June 16 was 23, but the violence didn't stop. It spread across Soweto and then across South Africa. The official records by the government-appointed Sile Commission reported that 575 people died, with 451 killed by police action. 3,907 were injured. 5,980 were arrested. Other sources put the death toll higher, up to 700. What's clear, the majority of victims were students. The numbers, however, do not capture what was broken and what was built. Within 4 months, 160 African communities across all provinces were involved in the resistance. At least 250,000 people in Soweto alone took part. The uprising spread to Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, and other townships. The government responded with mass arrests, burnings, and the Internal Security Amendment Act. Many students fled into exile to join the ANC and PAC for military training. They became known as the Class of 76.
Freedom is coming tomorrow. Get ready, mama, prepare for your freedom. Freedom is coming tomorrow. Get ready, mama, prepare for your freedom. Freedom is coming tomorrow.
The uprising also led to increased international condemnation of apartheid and sanctions. The image of Hector Peterson, carried by Mbuyisa Makubo, taken by Simon Zima, became a global symbol of resistance. June 16 is now commemorated in South Africa as National Youth Day. The Hector Peterson Memorial and Museum in Soweto stands on the site of the protests. The uprising marked a turning point. It showed that apartheid could not control black youth. It shifted the struggle from passive resistance to armed and mass resistance. The Class of 76 would return as soldiers, organizers, and leaders in the 1980s fight against apartheid. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission records that there were hundreds of victims from the uprising and its aftermath. The Soweto uprising was not just about language. It was about dignity, identity, and the right to be heard. Students who should have been in class were forced onto the streets by a policy that denied their humanity. Their sacrifice forced South Africa and the world to confront apartheid's brutality. Today, Youth Day reminds us that young people can change history. June 16, 1976 lasted less than a day, but its echo lasted nearly 50 years. What began as a march against the language policy ended as a rupture in South Africa's story. 20,000 students walked out of class that morning carrying signs and discipline. They were met with tear gas, dogs, and bullets. By nightfall, hundreds were dead or wounded. June 16 in South Africa is a public holiday, but more than that, it is a reminder that young people can change the direction of a country when they refuse to be silent. A reminder that policies about language, education, and identity are never just about administration. They are about dignity. The Soweto uprising did not end apartheid on its own. That took another 18 years of struggle, negotiation, and sacrifice. But it broke the illusion that black youth would accept their place quietly. The students who marched in 1976 wanted more than the right to learn English. They wanted the right to be seen, to be heard, to be human. Their courage did not guarantee freedom, but it made freedom unavoidable. June 16, 1976 remains forever embedded in our lives. Never again should this be allowed to happen.
Safa pheli sizwe simnyama iwasafa
Isizwe saba
kavula moya ayimpoka lize wemaye wemolo Safa pheli sizwe simnyama iwasafa
Isizwe saba
kavula moya ayimpoka lize wemaye ngiyakhala Safa pheli sizwe simnyama iwasafa
Isizwe saba
Alamula ayimpoka lize wemaye wemolo wemaye ngiyakhala